Welcome to Chief Everything Officer, a podcast for entrepreneurs who do it all. We are sponsored by Juntobot, an impact-oriented venture school and studio focused on designing and scaling startup ecosystems for the future.
Welcome, everybody, to the Juntobot podcast. I have with me today Clayton Banks, the CEO of Silicon Harlem, an amazing organization located in Harlem, New York. And I'm going to let him introduce himself, but I just need to say I am absolutely thrilled to have him on. I've known him for years. I've been blown away with what he's been doing over the years. Sometimes it seems almost single-handedly moving the needle. He's a real power player in the New York area, and I'm honored to have him on our podcast. Clayton, greetings, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Devin. And I want to say right back to you, what great work you're doing, and I'm obviously honored to be on your show here. And myself, I am the CEO of Silicon Harlem, and good news. This year, 2023, that's why I'm so excited to be on your show with you. You're the very first person I'm talking to online then for 23. So this gives me good luck.
Yes.
This is the 10th year of Silicon Harlem. We are celebrating our 10th year in 2023. So I'm very proud of that, being the founder, the CEO, a great team. And our whole entire way that we look at the world is how to make it more easy for everyone, right? So to bring more equity to everything and all that kind of stuff. And we'll be talking about that throughout the day. Cool. But certainly, me personally, I'm very proud to be the CEO of Silicon Harlem, making a big difference, not only just in New York City, but across the country, on giving people more access and exposure than they've ever had before. Starting with the prism of technology and getting more and more people involved on the side of getting a better life, a better job, a better family. Everything works better when we give people more access and exposure.
Cool. So that sounds like a pretty hefty mission right there. Right? How did you arrive at this point where this became something that you were interested in doing, where you able to have the leverage to be able to move the needle on this? How did you get to where you are today?
I started at 10 years old. So it may sound a bit crazy, but in some ways it's true. My father was a military man. Mm-hmm. And as a result, I grew up in a military world, and particularly from 0 to 10, where my father was we lived on Camp Pendleton in California. Mm-hmm. And so when you live on a base in the military, particularly the Marines, you'll find that everybody is the same. So everyone was the same. Mm-hmm. We all had the same kind of house. We all go to the same commissaries. We went to the same schools. So I didn't know that there was rich people or poor people. I never saw that. I never saw poor people or rich people until my father retired and we went into a city that was, right near the base. But so you still had a lot of that same, platform. But I certainly started to realize, wow, there's somebody that is rich and got all this stuff. And then there's somebody that's poor and doesn't have anything. And then I realized that there were some people that might have a single parent home. I never even saw that before. It was like, I said, at 10 years old, I got to fix this. Something's going on here. What is happening? That can't happen. Yeah. And so it really started in me with that. And of course, as life goes on, you get involved in so many different types of things. High school, being very much focused on governance and how we could be much better at our school, very diverse school. A lot of us come from military, and, so it was a little bit easier than perhaps other areas. Mm-hmm. But when I got to college, when I did undergrad, I realized that I was at a school that was 1% minority. So all of a sudden you start to stand out a little bit. It was kind of, whoa. I mean, literally the Ku Klux Klan were very comfortable coming on my campus. Absolutely. Ooh. I'm not making that up. Yeah. And so I was very, I I became a little bit more militant. Like I couldn't believe that this could be happening.
Yeah.
And so I got very involved with the school and very involved in trying to, maybe make a little bit difference on that. And I think I did. And all of it sort of shaped me into realizing that, as much as I was in pursuit of money and power, I also was very much in pursuit of how to make life better for as many people as I possibly could.
Yeah.
And when you find out that there's so many kids, particularly African-American little kids, are not getting into college. They're not getting even out of high school. And when you see those kind of statistics, to me, you got to do something about it if you can. Yeah. And so that sort of shaped me up, even though, like I said, right out of school, I started to really make sure I focused on doing good business, making some money, being a good person, but certainly looking for power and money. But what I learned over that time was there was one more thing that was more important than power and money, which was how you spend your time.
Yeah.
And that's what has shaped me, Devin, to this day, is make sure that I'm optimizing my time. Yeah. And I will bring more detail to that as we talk here. Yeah. But certainly time, if there's nothing else anybody remembers what I have to say or even remember me, is that I hope you use the word time, because you can't get it back. You shouldn't waste it. It's the most cherished thing, and it's the one thing in Earth and universe is that it's both infinite and finite. You, Devin, are finite. Okay.
Yeah.
Time is before you, and time will be after you, right? So time is the most critical thing. It's not power and money. That's needed, that comes, but it's really time. So we'll talk more about that as we go.
Yeah. That's I don't remember where I read a book or I read a blog, or I don't remember where I found this concept, but it was a concept of figure maybe you die at 85. Okay. How many years, how many days, how many hours, how many minutes between now and 85, when your theoretical death moment is, create a timer for that. That's how many. And so I have one, and I have a timer, and it just every day it tells me how many days do you have left? How many minutes do you have left? And you just got to think, how much impact are you going to make? So when you sit there and you're like, you know what? I'm going to watch that new HBO show. Okay. That is 2 hours that you're not feeding your brain or coaching somebody or building a product or raising money to be able to, like, you make that, but you make it a purposeful decision is based off of.
I'll give you another example. I'll jump on top of what you're saying. If you look at it from this perspective, if I asked anyone on this call who they can remember being the richest person in the 60s, like who is the richest billionaire of the 60s that we could all like say, oh yeah, that was the richest person. You'll have a struggle with it. You can get there, but you'll struggle with that. But if you said who made a big impact in the 1960s, and so the reason why I say that is because if you look at a Martin Luther King, he was dead at 39. Okay? He's dead at 39, but what did he do with the time? And that is what is driving me to this very day, is that I want to be able to use my time with the great opportunities that I have had and the access and exposure that I was able to receive, and make sure that I get known more for that than how much money I've made. That's not going to be the thing anybody will remember me for, is how well off I might have been. But they're going to remember that I put 250 kids in college, that they'll remember that I've been able to connect people that were not connected. They will remember that I understood what a real civil right meant. They will remember these type of things, Devin, and you and I have talked about these type of things. Have worked together on these type of things. So that is why time has to be cherished. Yeah.
So let's dig into that. I think that's a really important, one of the things that when I'm working with either for or nonprofit startups, when we talk about their double-sided funnel of innovation, what is the impact you're making, and how are you going to make sure you have a sustainable organization around it? But it all starts from this pinnacle point, which is, what is the problem you're solving? What is your massive transformational purpose? For those of you who don't know you, so a lot of people already know who you are, but I'd love for you to kind of describe in a little bit more detail, what is your massive transformational purpose? What is a problem that you're looking to solve?
I'll give you the whole universal piece, but I'm going to start with the seed of what will blossom to what I envision. So the very seed of what we're trying to do, what I'm trying to do in my team, is looking at connectivity. Okay. We all must be connected. It's no longer a nice thing or a luxury or any of that. It's actually a real resource. And when you look at connectivity in the history of human beings, from the very beginning, no matter where you come from and how you think of that, connectivity was always the most important piece. In fact, every single one of us had to come out of the womb with an umbilical cord because you have to be connected. And that's why I believe that why technology has moved us into a level of connectivity that we've never seen before with the internet. And what I have found when I was doing surveys in New York City, for example, and found in some of the lower income areas like Harlem, 35 to 40% of people did not have the internet in their home. That was in 2016 when I did that survey. And in 2020, it was still pretty much the same. And then the COVID hit and everybody needed the internet. And so many people who did not have it were dying in Harlem. Yeah. That's a true thing. This is not like a fake story. This is a real true story.
It's not that they can't get Netflix. There's a fundamental difference in that connectivity in terms of health outcomes, in terms of career outcomes, in terms of just everything. And
more, even you can even say from a civics perspective, if a city where you are, where I am, whether it's Austin or New York or tribal lines or whatever, if the governance has moved your civics to the internet, right, and you don't have the internet, in my opinion, you're no longer a citizen. So that's a shame. We can't allow that to happen. As you know, being in New York, that oftentimes if you have a car, you're going to get a ticket, no matter what happens, right? So at some point, you're going to get a parking ticket or something. So I get them all the time. And I said, I'm going to test this. I always pay my tickets online. So I said, you know what? I'm going to see if I can pay this ticket on the phone. Let me just call them up. Let's act like I don't have the internet. So I called, and the first thing that it said was the best way to pay your ticket is to go online. So what I'm saying is this is the seed of what I'm all about, to get everyone to where they need to get, right? So if you don't have the internet, to your point, some of the things that you just said, you're not getting the access that allows you to get to better health or to get the job or to be able to get educated. All these things, the number of kids that lost so much time in school, particularly in these lower income neighborhoods, because hell, I don't have the internet. Why have a computer if you don't have the internet, right? So not only do they not have the internet, they don't have a computer. Because why do I need a computer if I don't have the internet? Even some of the teachers were calling me saying, hell, I don't know how to do this stuff. So we have a major issue, in my opinion, in this country. It's not just Harlem. It's not just low income. It's the tribal lands. It's people who live in different areas around this country. If you look at the country in general, it's 25 to 30% of people don't have internet. And that's like a third size country. I mean, what is going on here? I mean, we really have to get at this in a profound way. So if you look at that as my core, at the core of this is making sure everyone's connected. And then around that becomes, how do we also look at the access and exposure to technology in general? Some of the great things that you were able to do to give people a shot with startups and things of that nature, that means that they had to have some sort of acclimation to technology, right? To help their business get started to these days. You can hardly get any kind of company going unless you have some level of technology involved, even if it's just getting your accounting down, if it's your personnel, all that has to go online. So I'll talk more about that deeper, but just wanted you to know that that's the seed of where we start with that.
100%, 100%. I'm feeling you on that. I wonder. I was listening to this this long form, kind of like a frontline type of podcast on the impact of Starlink to the Ukrainian battlefield, and the concept of having that much bandwidth all the way down at the local soldier level, and how that changed warfare at a fundamental level. I wonder, does that change? Are you happy for that technology to come into play? Does that change the equation for you in terms of the inner city, or is it, well, great, now we've got a billionaire with control over, when it should be more of a public works thing? Like, what do you fall on that? How do you feel about that?
Well, Starlink and orbit level of connectivity is a real thing, and it can have a role, but it's not the complete, sort of way of getting this done. What we have to do is make sure that everyone has connectivity in their home, and Starlink doesn't necessarily gonna do that, right? So, but I do think there's a role. Anyone that's going to help get connectivity to people, it's something we should celebrate. But I do think that this country and all countries, we're not number one in internet at all. If you go to Singapore, we're 100% connected, and other places, and people are going to where the internet is, and that's hurting us here in the United States to not making sure that it's happening everywhere, fast and quick and affordable and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think it's just one way that the internet's going to be deployed. It's going to take a mix of ways that deployment happens. And far as I'm concerned, as long as people have it in an affordable way without having to sweat over it, it's a real resource. I call it broadband as a resource. We got to raise the bar. And the whole point is, some of us will be wiring homes, some of them will be wireless homes, some of them will be Starlink type of homes. All that kind of work is being done now more than ever. Obviously, COVID helped us get there. You and I know that we've been working on this way before COVID.
Yeah,
I've been writing about it literally since 1997, to be honest about it. I don't want people to think I'm
just ripped the blanket off the inequities. Like, nobody could. It was basically nobody could fake it anymore.
We can't fake it anymore. That's right.
It's when all of those wildfires went through California, and then they're like, and basically the weather went completely wacko. It's like, all right, dude, it's global warming. You can't you can't argue with it anymore. There is no two sides of the coin when people are dying because they can't get access to doctors, and the whole classes aren't able to take. I mean, it was just
No, you're absolutely right, and this is why this is the moment where you're able to putting voices through your own way to make this very clear for people. And it's one of these things where this isn't a matter of whether we're going to do it. It's a matter of when we're going to do it, and we got to really get it done. And I remember one of the great congressmen that died right before COVID, and said that internet and broadband is the civil. It's almost like it's the time of our time, right? It's you and I and the rest of us lead on this call. It's our time to look at us and see how we can make ourselves better. And it's so important that if the baseline is there, it's really great. If you got everybody connected, everybody wins. That's the good news.
Yeah.
Anyone not connected makes us all bad. So this is really that civil right moment, right? It's the civil rights of our time, as that congressman said, Congressman Lewis. So I think it's just important for us to embrace that, give everybody an opportunity. COVID has really made it clear that I'm actually also been asked by the FCC to look at broadband as and how it's going to become more and more equitable. So, I see it from a very big part of what our country is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And they realize that a big part of it is, what? We need to figure out where the discrimination is happening here.
Yeah.
You start to call that word out and it gets everybody uncomfortable, but there's a bit of discrimination when low-income people don't get internet. There's something wrong there. Or
this is the argument I had. I was saying, it was like, look, the internet is this generation's public library.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. In the 70s, if we didn't let Black people into the public libraries, do you think there would have been a riot? Do you think there would have been, like, people would have had a problem with that? And it was, well, it's not the same because you pay for the internet. I'm like, what if you had to pay to go to the library? Like, oh, you can't do that. That's a public service. I'm like, exactly.
That's
you just made the argument for me. Is that, like, it's a public, like, if all of the world's knowledge is there, if all of the world's entertainment is there, if all of the world's services are there, and more, if you can't use it, you are illiterate, then why are we charging for it?
Well, this is the kind of language I like to hear. So,
I'm a little bit, I'm a little bit of a bomb thrower.
I know. No, listen, you and I are on the same plane on this one, man. I'm with you. I've written about it. I've been in cranes about it. Not everybody likes what I have to say, but the reality is, I think about my childhood again, to go back to that for a moment. And I remember in elementary school going to, on the base, working, in military type of schools. So it's all diverse, there's no one who's better than the next and blah, blah, blah. But I found myself with the teachers, sort of pointing me out as, oh, you're the smartest kid in the class and all this other stuff. And I always would feel embarrassed. But at the same time, I would think, all my friends are smart. Why are you pointing me out? And I realized something, Devin, that was different than what some kids didn't have, which was my parents got us an encyclopedia set for kids. And so I had the encyclopedia. So if the teacher said, hey, we want everybody do a paper on
you knew the answer. And
I had it all. The encyclopedia of our era is the internet. If you do not have the internet, you do not have access. I had the access. That's why I was able to move and groove and make things happen. I loved them encyclopedia. They were built for kids, the ones that I had. And so I was able to be very, very ahead of the game. That's what the internet's doing now, Devin, to your point.
I was talking to my technical co-founder about AI, and he was saying that his wife was freaking out because ChatGPT, somebody created a grant proposal using ChatGPT and it was acceptable quality. And they're like, what? So wait, they're just going to create? And I was like, well, but the thing is that you don't go to a metal worker and judge them on how many pieces of metal they can cut with their fingers. It's how well they can use that tool to craft metal. And more and more, the tools are just evolving to this point where the tools are all digital, they're all online. And whether you're smart, whether you provide value, is whether you can use the tools. And if they're online and you don't have access to that, you can't even start to learn how to use it. Like, I went online and I was just playing around with ChatGPT, and I was able to come up with some, like, really cool stuff. I couldn't do that if I didn't have internet. You can't even get interested in AI. I mean, unless you go to the library and pick up a William Gibson book from the 60s or the 70s about AI, you're not going to get an understanding of it as you would with playing with it and learning these tools.
And AI it's a fun thing to talk about, because another part of what I believe in is that if any new technology that comes along, and AI has been around a long, long time, but the way we now have technology to really use it in our day-to-day lives, it needs to have everybody involved in it, meaning not everyone, but it needs to have diversity in it, right? So when we talk about AI, one of the big areas we talk about is driverless vehicles and using artificial intelligence to help a vehicle go from point A to point B. And when that AI is put together inside of that vehicle, the question becomes, has everyone thought about it, right? So one of the tests that we had was in Arizona, where we had an AI car driving down the street, and one of the things it could not recognize was an African American. So
like, didn't we solve that during the Best Buy fiasco of Microsoft webcam? Remember that, the webcam that couldn't pick up the black dude in Best Buy.
That's just one of those things. I don't think anybody's being, a level of malice or anything, but the point is that you just go with what you know.
Yeah.
And if you don't have anyone going, hey, by the way, I'm here too. We can have a disaster. So the key to this, things like AI and the metaverse and everything that's coming up here and doing what we're doing is make sure there's a lot of diversity in that. And I'm not just saying based on color or anything like that. It's also the way people are growing up or how thinking, and you put all that together in a big bottle of soup or whatever. You're going to have a better outcome. And it's a much more struggle. It's a little longer. It's a little tougher, but it's a better. Yeah. And I've seen that over and over again in the tech world for sure. And those are the type of things we got to sort of why it's so important for everyone to get this access and exposure.
So I have a question for you. You've been doing this for what? You've been focused on this problem, you said, for what, 10 years now?
Well, that's of Silicon Harlem, but I've been in this space for a long time. Yeah.
So I'm going to assume that you've been kicked in the teeth at least a couple times and told to shut up and sit down and not gotten the grant and not had anybody pay attention. And a whole host of things that happen as you're trying to work on a project. Where does your passion come from? How do you get back up and keep at it? What gives you that passion to continue on and really focus on this, even when everybody else is like, Clayton, much more important things to focus on. Your thing is not important. And you're like, no, it really is. And you continue on until finally we're at this point where the proof is so on the wall, nobody can argue with you anymore, like 2020, where finally, when I saw those articles coming out, I was like, finally, Clayton is getting his due. Like, if Clayton is not on every single news post, because I know you've been doing this for years and years and years and years. And many people were like, well, sure, but, how do you continue on? Where do you find that passion? Where is that passion come from? What is that?
Well, again, I hate to keep going back to my background with the military, but it is sort of battles and wars, right? So there's battles and then there's the war. And I put a lot more focus on both, but certainly understand that the war is what I'm really going after. So there are battles that I maybe lose a couple here and there, win a bunch along the way. And the ultimate goal here is to solve the war. And so a big part of that, Devin, is that I'm looking at my most recent issue. I thought was a hit in the gut. Was I got the city to work with us and work with a lot of other providers about putting together what was called the Internet Master Plan. That Internet Master Plan was literally put together in 2019. Okay, 2019, and they asked me to, add some ideas and thinking around this whole Internet Master Plan. I was very proud that I was able to add my voice to some of that. And when they finally put it together, it was I had a meetup. If you remember the Silicon Harlem meetups, had a meetup in January 21 of 2020. I had a meetup, and I asked the chief technology officer to come and present the Internet Master Plan. A first time in history where a big new thing was going to be announced in Harlem. So we were very proud that they launched the Internet Master Plan in Harlem. So we were so excited. That Internet Master Plan had principles. It showed what it really thought it would, how important it was to make sure everybody had an internet. It was just really well done. And 2-3 weeks later, COVID. Whoa, what?
I can't tell you. I had that same conversation, and I'm like, I told, I'm not going to say his name. I'm sure he wouldn't mind because it wasn't a bad conversation. But I had this conversation with somebody in city government, and I was like, look, this is the example of, I get it. You've got to pay for this right now. This is the emergency now. But this is like saying the seniors in college are in huge jeopardy. So let's defund K through 12 to make sure that we can support. Like, you still have startup founders. You still have an ecosystem. And everybody was like, COVID, 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 COVID. Like, it almost put our company down. They removed all of our funding. They were like, sorry, we're focused on COVID. We lost every single grant within the space of 4 months. I cannot believe how frustrating, because that was a culmination of what, like 5 years?
I hear your pain, and so that's one of those battles, right? So this is one of those battles, but the good news for us, actually, COVID was a good thing for us in some ways.
Well, afterward,
I hate to say it that way, but it was actually one of those things where people actually started calling me, hey, what's going on here? People don't have the internet. Clayton, what do we all need to do? And I was thinking, well, we came up with an internet master plan. Maybe we ought to like accelerate
it.
You know what I'm saying? We got the plan here. Let's go. And so I got a chance to get in front of de Blasio, and they really got excited about it, and they started putting stuff together. They put together an RFEI. We got awarded, and we were able to start deploying internet in public housing. That was no money behind it. Okay, so we were okay with that. As long as we had the license to go in there and start doing the work, we were happy to do it, and a lot of us did it. And then they came out in late of 20 saying, hey, we're now going to do an RFP. The RFP had $157 million behind it. $157 million. And the whole idea was to make sure everyone gets connected in public housing. And as you know, public housing is the largest public housing in the country.
Yeah.
So 11 companies, not the typical ones that have been serving over these years, but 11 new companies came in and got awarded to basically make sure everyone gets connected. But the contract, unfortunately, was towards the end of de Blasio's time. The new admin came in and basically put a stop to that. That's that. Boom, right in the stomach.
Yeah.
So where we had this opportunity to have all this money to get out in the right way, to not only get the internet there, but these 11 companies also care about people. So we're going to also show them how to use it, how to adopt it, how to use education through it, all the times that come with that, which I think we've been missing for so many years. At any rate, it is what it is. We hope that can come back at some point. We got a little bit of a hit in the gut on that one, but we are going back to see if we can still work with the administration. It still needs to make sure everyone in public housing has this access and exposure. You'll hear me say that the rest of this call is access and exposure, because that's all people need. And I did work, for a short time with President Clinton. And he's the one who used to say that to me all the time. And the point was, intelligence is distributed everywhere evenly, but access and exposure is not. So this is not an intelligence issue. It's just a matter of access and exposure. You let people get access and exposure, they will blossom. So anyway, yes, I have had some battles. I've caught one right there, as new as that is. But the war is not over, my man.
So when you're talking to people about this problem, and you're talking about the people that you're trying to serve, and you're talking about all the different stakeholders in this, what have you learned about what people want and need in terms of that access? Like what are we looking at? I mean, is there a fundamentally different thing that a municipal government needs to think about when they're trying to provide a certain level of bandwidth to their citizens? Is there a certain set of tools that an individual, a family head of household in public housing who has a limited fixed budget, and you're saying, here, we're going to be able to give this to you for $20 a month, and they've got to make a decision whether they're going to take on that. What is it that they want and need that allows them to say, okay, good, we'll do that? and will not,
Yeah, I think it's a good question. So there's a couple of ways that I can sort of address that. One is we've been working really hard, like I said, doing stuff through the FCC, et cetera, to try to make people realize this is a resource. I use that soft word resource because if I say utility, everybody gets messed up over that. But a resource is essentially a utility. So so I use the word resource to get people more comfortable. But it really is a resource. And another one that would be in that way is electricity, water, or even mail, right? If you think of U.S. mail, there was a moment in time where not everybody got mail, maybe every week or every couple of weeks. If you lived in certain parts of the country, you wouldn't always get your mail, the Appalachians and the Grand Canyon, whatever. And so the government stepped in and said, wait a minute, everyone needs to get their mail every day. Yeah. What is going on here? Why are we doing? And so the government stepped in and poof, all of a sudden, everyone gets their mail, regardless where you live. I think that's pretty much how the internet is going to have to go. And it may have to be, driven by government in some way, certainly by citizens and communities, et cetera, to say, listen, everyone has to have the internet. This is no longer a luxury. When we all started the internet, and I was one of those people early on, it was fun to have the internet. It wasn't anything I needed. It was just something fun to do. And that's been pretty much the case up to a certain point. And then all of a sudden, when you now have to get on a plane, you better have the internet, or if you want to do this or that and the other, even, anyway, you get what I'm saying. And the point is that once we started to move everything to the internet, it became less of a luxury and more of a resource. And it's a good reason. You can't even get a job now without having the internet. So people have to go to libraries or some sort of way to get online. Some people will say, oh, well, hey, people have a phone. Well, I teach kids all the time. If they come with a phone, they can't do anything, right? They can't code on a phone. So when we look at this in general, I believe that internet is not only a resource, but in a lot of ways it is a utility. And the more that we talk about it this way, the more that I think the country, from top down and down up, will realize that we have to do that. This is probably not going to ever allow people to become billionaires again, right? Like the incumbents that have provided over the years, all multi-billion-dollar companies, they haven't figured out that they do know actually that broadband is not that expensive for them. Yeah, that's just the reality. They actually are using broadband right now to keep their television going on because most people, especially young people, are not subscribing to video. They can get all the video they want through these streaming networks. So why have all that 500 channels that you don't even watch more than 5? So it's a big issue. But let me just go back to what you said. That it's not only the governance, it's not only what people like ourselves in professional positions to help, but it's the people. The people, when you sit down with them, and this is the difference that I've tried to make in some ways, is to help a mayor and our other electives to sit with communities and say a simple question: what are your issues? And what we hear, and I'll just talk about New York City real quick. You will hear, and I did this 10 years ago with the mayor, and when they opened it up and said, okay, I want to hear from the community. What do you guys think is the problems? And there's 3 things that came up right at the top. We don't have enough affordable housing. We think there's a sanitation issue here, which ends up having way too much vermin, right? Too many rats, right? 10 years later, I get not me, but I'm at a mayor town hall, opened it up. Hey, what is everybody, just 10 years later? Oh, we have a sanitation issue. We have not enough affordable housing. we got vermin, we got rats, and they added transportation kind of sucks too. So all this is saying to you is that
such a change,
right. And it also tells you that the government can't do it by itself. It can't solve everything by itself. So I believe that we need to take a look at ourselves and say, how do we get involved? And one way we can help people get involved is make sure they have the internet. Because if you look at what we try to do with data is allow people, the community, the citizens of New York to actually dial 311 and say, hey, I hear a lot of noise in my street.
Yeah.
That gets into our data, and we're actually able to address that. So when you now say, hey, I see this, rat area, we can go and deal with that, or transportation and sanitation. And so I think it's not just the government doing, but the citizens themselves, but we have to give them the tools.
Yeah. One thing I noticed something. So, you know about our apprentice program, and we're constantly recruiting. We've been expanding out past the U.S., continental U.S., and we've been trying to penetrate into Africa, into the continent, and Nigeria is our kind of tip of the spear. And I started reaching out to Nigerian candidates and interviewed 100 Nigerian candidates at about 20 to 25. And overwhelmingly, they were like, well, I've done every single Google certification, every single LinkedIn certification. I've taken all these Coursera courses. I'm certified in this. 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 And what I've been doing for the past 3 years is direct marketing and lead generation for this company in Germany, this company in Egypt, this company in the US, but I would love to work for your organization. I interview kids in America, and they're like, well, I'm graduating from college and with a marketing degree, and I would love to get involved. And I'm like, have you done any of your own personal, like what do you do to feed your brain? Or like, are you certified in anything? Well, I've been in college. I'm like, no, I'm like, because I'm looking at these kids in Nigeria who have literally, like, I have kids that are trying to log into our Zoom calls on a phone on a street corner so they can get the cafe Wi-Fi so that they can access the call. But they're able to do it because they have at least the access to the tools. You know what I mean? Like they don't have and like I have all these kids that have got unlimited Wi-Fi, unlimited internet, on their campus, in their homes, everywhere, and they're using it to play Fortnite. And then you have the people who don't have the access to the tools are hungry for the tools, and not for nothing, they're going to use those tools to get ahead.
It's such a good point. It really is. And it's one of these things where we're into an era now in human life where it's starting to go a little bit backwards, right? In other words, it's in some ways it's a good thing where we want people to have skills. We want people to be much more skills than just, sort of moving around, just whatever. It's now a little bit more and where our colleges have to keep up is to now help people get skills, not just theory. And so this may not align with everything you just said, but what I'm saying is when you hear some of those kids in these areas like Africa and stuff like that may not have all of the kind of access that we have here in America, one of the things they do is they figure out a skill. They'll figure out something to be able to always be able to do some work. And I think we do a good amount of that here in this country too, but we need to understand. One of the things I come to realize, at least, when you first get into college, the real greatness of it is just how it transforms you as a person, because you're connecting with people from all over the world. You're in another space where you can have some independence. There's just these things. The actual graduation into a skill, is tricky. Some of it you may not get, you may not get the job you were looking for. You may be unemployed. There may be all types of problems. But if you have worked, whether it's in college or out of college, to get a skill, you can never not have a job. So I say that to everybody who's listening on this, that you may be judging someone who doesn't go to college that could actually, do something to help you, like fix something in your house or help you with your car or whatever the case may be. And I think we sometimes overlook that those kind of jobs are still real. On the tech side, there's a lot of people in the tech sector that has no college degree. A lot of them have learned on themselves, and we need people to do things like, oh, gee, we got an issue with cybersecurity.
That's, by the way, that's me. You know how I got my start? Barnes and Noble.
There you go.
I sat on the carpet at Barnes and Noble and read the Dummy's Guide to HTML. And I learned how to program websites. And I started doing website design for the fashion people and the music people that I knew from being a DJ. And then a friend of mine who worked at J. Walter Thompson said, yo, we're looking for somebody to do web design for De Beers Diamonds. And I know you do websites. Would you be interested in applying for it? I'm like, yeah, sure. Got the job. And there was my career.
That was good old days too.
Well, that was when nobody knew. Nobody knew what the internet was.
It.
So
I loved it.
If you knew how to code HTML4, which was like is now like at that time it was the equivalent of like
10,000 characters. When today it's one. It's like it would take forever to do shit, but it was so much fun because not everybody could do it, frankly. And I was remote a long time. I've been remote a long time, and I can remember working with MTV and doing some stuff for them and paying me a lot of money while I was on the Dominican Republic on the beach doing the work for them. So I love it. Those are good old days, and that's what I'm saying about why the seed of what I'm doing is about connectivity. Because if you're connected, you can like create new skills for yourself. And you never know when you can just be picked up and get something going on.
Absolutely.
It's that bizarre.
So when you look at the different options out there to solve this problem, and people are like, well, we could move our money into giving everybody could use a telephone. We'll just give everyone telephone access. Or we'll just make sure all the forms are in different languages. Or like, I mean, I don't know, but what are the different options that people are suggesting in replacement of bandwidth for all or internet for all? And why do you think it's different, or what you're providing is better? How do you make that case?
Well, I think the case has been proven, right? COVID has made it really clear that, and there's 4 areas that I think probably are most focused on and essential. One of them is education. If you don't have a computer and you don't have the internet, there's no way you can, have a education that is at a level you need to have. So education is one of those disparities, to your point, that I think is really making a difference. Second is the health. The health issue, it's unbelievable because through COVID, I had to do anything that had to do with my doctor. I had to do it through, like what you and I are doing right now, through some sort of online Zoom or whatever. And so he would have to examine me, through a camera.
Let me see that mole. And like, dude, it's
what's that little thing on you over there? Oh, I don't know. I just had a cupcake. What do you got? So it's like, but there were people not able to do that. And then boom, they died. You know what I mean? So so when you look at education, you're looking at health. The third thing I think is quite important, as we've already talked about, is the access to your civics. If you need help in your neighborhood or in your home, and you don't have the ability to access those services that used to be able to just call on a phone, that's also very dangerous in terms of what's happening with what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
And then fourth, I think, and it's not in any kind of numbering, but workforce. How do you one, get a job or get a better job? You will do it online. There's no way you can do it almost any other way. You have to do it that way, which is online. And so people have to, like I said, go to shared areas to maybe share a computer and all this stuff. That's not good. So those are the four areas, Devin, that I think why this seed is so important and why I'm not the only person thinking of it. And the number one reason why, I would say the number one reason why most people don't have it, and people could probably debate me with on this, but I would say that the number one reason is just simply it's not affordable. It's really in New York up until this time, the average bill you had from one of those providers was $150 a month. That's a lot for everyone. All right. That's not a lot. That's not just a lot for poor people. That's a lot for working people. $150 a month.
Yeah.
And so, that's just average.
Where your grocery bill is maybe before.
Right.
It was like 200.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's one of these things where it's like, wait a minute. My friends are paying $300 a month, right? $350 a month between getting video, phone, and internet. And it's because sometimes they tell you got to take this double play or this triple play.
Yeah.
And I think we're all getting a little smarter about that, including the providers, but it's taken us some time to get to a point where everyone can be satisfied. I don't think the ISPs are necessarily happy about what COVID has done, which is allowed for governments around the country to go, hey, maybe we ought to find a way to lower the cost of internet.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing to do. It really is. So what the providers might say, well, it's not an affordable issue. It's an adoption issue. Really. So they're saying that people don't adopt it because they don't know about it or something like that.
They don't adopt a $300 bill. That's what they don't adopt. They would very much adopt the service, just not the bill, sir.
That's what I'm talking about. So that's where we are, man. But I can tell you that to your earlier question, the federal government did come up with something, and they came out with what's called the Affordable Connectivity Program. It's called the ACP. It goes across the entire nation, and it is really allowing people to get free internet from everyone, right? So whether it's a major ISP or a company like mine, anyone that meets the requirement can actually get broadband for free. And what that means is if you are in public housing, for example, that's an automatic person that can get free internet. So there are programs coming up that are helping. Now, the question is, will they sustain? Is this just a couple of year thing? What is the issue? We're all still sort of thinking that through.
And FYI, for everyone listening, if you are one of these people who need access to that program, or you know somebody who needs access to this program, we'll put the link below in the description so that you can access it. So just you don't have to frantically scribble and rewind. we'll put the link down below. But I'm sorry, go on. You were saying?
I'm glad you said that, because not enough people are hearing about it. Not enough people are getting access to it, and it's absolutely a game changer. You automatically get free. Well, for the most part, free internet. Some people are saying that, well, your price is $50 and you get $30 off. If you're dealing with me, I only charge $30. What does that mean? That means you get it for free. Yeah. So, you want to look at whoever is in your community, and but they all have, most of them have access to the Affordable Connectivity Program. Really important thing to do.
Let me ask you, let me put a different hat on, right? Let me put the angry capitalist hat on and say, so I'm either somebody running a local ISP, or I am in municipal government of a small to medium-sized city, and I'm struggling with trying to decide whether or not to pay for this. Or you're talking to the people who are deciding to re-up this when it runs out of steam. Yeah. What is the business case for this? That's what I mean by angry capitalists. Like, we understand the impact and the moral, I think the moral issue, but from a purely business perspective, from a purely like, what is the ROI in this? How much is it going to cost? How much does it cost to offer per person? And what is the value you get out from, like, say, a tax perspective, from a lifetime value of salary, whatever metric you choose?
Well, I'm not sure if this is a capitalist business anymore, meaning that it's as if to say, you know, how much money are you making providing water to a home? You know, it's governance involved. You know, it's more of these things where just everybody needs to get it and all that kind of stuff. So I think broadband would be a little bit different, but pretty close to that, where it's not a capitalist thing, it's more of a humanist thing. And when you look at that, as a provider, you better find other ways to make money besides just broadband. And I think providers can do that. Actually, I think you can, here's where I look at it. And I've been in the telecommunications business a long time. And one of the things I found out very early on is that if you are in somebody's home, you can't lose. You know, once you're in somebody's home and you have connectivity in that home, you can't lose. You know, you don't know what you can do. You know, just because they have the internet doesn't mean I can't say, oh, by the way, I'm the new Amazon. So
or I've got a phone, or
exactly. Or you do this or do that. So there's so much. Once you're in the home and they believe in you and they want to connect with you, you now can help them with all the things they want to do, and you get a piece of all of that. You do become billions. It's billions. That's how these cable companies, and like I said, I've been in it for a long time. So when I talk about them, I feel like I'm talking about myself.
Yeah.
But we didn't have no scholars or anything like that going into this business. We just figured out how to get a wire to somebody. And all of a sudden they were paying us a lot of money just because we were in their home and their TV looked cleaner. You know, that was all it was. I remember when we got HBO, my dad got HBO, and we were like, this looks so crazy because it was so clean and clear and boom, boom, boom.
You don't have to touch the rabbit ears. Like, don't move. That's perfect. I can see MASH and I can see Radar O'Reilly perfectly. Don't move. Yeah.
My father used to sit in his chair and I'd have to get up and go and change the channel for him, shit like that. It's like, come on. Excuse my language, everybody. But anyway, so I do think that once you're in the home, and that's why I love what I'm doing, is you get to know these people and they want to trust you, and you cannot lose at that point. I don't like the word capitalist, but you do make a lot of capital. I'm a humanist, right? And it turns out that humanism is much more valuable than capitalism, because when capitalism is put in place, somebody has to lose. In humanism, you don't have to, no one has to lose. In capitalism, somebody has to lose, somebody wins. And I'm looking at humanism, and I hope everybody on this call, as much as you may call yourselves a capitalist, it's not true. You want the true full way, as we started this call, is the human-centered design. That's something that we really focus on, because once you do that, again, you're going to win. You're going to win both money-wise, but certainly the value of who you are.
So let's talk to a different decision maker. We talked to the people running the access, the bandwidth, right? But let's say I'm on a city council. Let's say I'm in a municipal government, small to medium-sized town in the middle of America, maybe on the outskirts of a major municipal area, and I've got 30 to 40% of my constituents with no or very limited internet, and we're trying to decide a bill to give free access to the internet to them and do that last tenth of a mile to their homes or whatever it might be. How do you make that case for them?
Well, you just made the case. It was, we talked about, right? All of the essential things that community needs, that little city, that little area, that the governance is in place, they have to find a way to make sure. They cannot be a thriving community if they don't have that kind of infrastructure. So the reason why, if you listen to the infrastructure that came out of the Biden plans, He put almost $1 trillion in the infrastructure bill, and 60 billion of it is for broadband. Now, we've never seen that done before. That means that if you put broadband in an infrastructure bill, seems to me that it's now being called infrastructure. Infrastructure has traditionally been streets, tunnels, and bridges, which are what? They're available to everyone. Streets, bridges, and tunnels is available to everyone. Who's very much involved? The community, the governance, the electives. So I believe we might be on a pathway, Devin, to having broadband become part of infrastructure, which means that community that you just described, that mayor, that governor, that community leader now has to be a provider. What happens when we start to create municipal broadband? And I'm not saying anything except what I think is possible, which is imagine having municipal broadband. Doesn't mean that the government is becoming an ISP, but they would connect with ISPs to say, hey, let's make this a municipal broadband, a basic municipal. Let me give the way I talked about mail. So the mail comes out U.S. mail and everybody gets it. But if you want to get something overnight, or if you want to get something big, or whatever the case may be, you go to one of these other people, like the FedEx, these private companies, the U.S. UPS, and all that stuff. So I think that's the same thing that could happen here, where we can have a basic municipal broadband available to every single citizen in your community, regardless of their income. And then the big guys can still be there. Hey, you can get that municipal broadband, but if you want this here, this extra TV stuff that we have, or we got the faster speed, we can give you 2 gigabits, whatever the case may be, then you might want, if you can afford it, you go up to the higher level. But everyone has to have the internet, right? So to your question, my answer is there's a good chance that we'll have more municipal broadband, and that had been stopped by a lot of incumbents, making it not even available to governments to create their own internet service providing. That is being, those walls are coming down. And I think a lot of mayors, a lot of community leaders, a lot of governors are now thinking about how can we make sure that we have basic municipal broadband to everyone.
So this is the second time you've mentioned the post office in communicating this idea, and I wonder, is there I love things that you pay $1 and it gives $2 of value. I hate when I pay $1, get $1 value, but it's a losing proposition. And I love this idea of like, do you think the post office should be the conduit for this ISP, this national ISP model? They're already providing service to every single address. They're struggling with how do they handle the internet and what it does to their business model. Can you see a world where all of that $80 billion, or not all of it, but a large chunk of it, goes to the post office to become the ISP for the country?
It's a great question. I'm with you on keeping everything open, right? Keep the hand open. You don't know what, we don't want to be like this. We want to keep it wide open. I tend to lean towards, still, there's a difference between living in the Appalachians and living in New York City. So what you need to design when it comes to make sure everyone's connected might have to be much more local. So the mayor of that area should be leading on how we can make sure that everyone has basic internet access. And in New York City, the same thing, and Chicago, and Grand Canyon, wherever. I don't think the post folks already have enough on their hands, right? And so I think it's going to be, and it gives more, if you will, city-driven way of looking at it. And if you're a city of cars and planes and all this kind of stuff, that's different from an area that's dealing with horses and cows. You know what I mean? So we got to make sure that what we do is effective to the community itself.
Yeah, which is all like the third one. I was thinking when you're saying that, I was thinking like having moved from New York City to Texas, and just realizing and being both in rural and urban Texas, even urban Texas, like Austin has gone from a little bit under 1 million people to 3 million people.
Wow.
And they're like, we need to expand the highways. I'm like, no, you don't, man. No, you don't. You can't fit 3 million and 3 million cars in this city. You need public transportation. New York did it ish, right? You know, like if you don't count the A train, if they did it right, you know. The A train, by the way, for anybody who's not in New York, the A train breaks down like almost religiously. It breaks down, and it's direct. They figured out this way to personalize their breakdowns to your schedule. So whenever you have an important meeting, it will break down. But that I've been
putting a little shade on New York here, man. Come on.
Not on New York in general. I think one of the things, but I think there's a challenge there that New York went through that I'm seeing Austin going through, which is 1 million to 3 mil. We went from like 6 mil to 9 mil. And the infrastructure couldn't handle it. It wasn't built to handle 9 million people, right? And in the meantime, certain governors who will remain nameless, but you can search to the public record, reduce the amount of money going to New York City to the MTA, and then they couldn't pay for stuff. And then it starts to break down, and they're like, see, it doesn't work, so we should privatize. You're like, no. You removed all the budget so it wouldn't work, you know.
These are all the lessons.
I don't want to get.
But these are the lessons we have to utilize, right?
Yeah.
These are the lessons we ought to be very clear about, so we don't, sort of do the same things, right?
Yeah.
So to your point, we cannot allow. We have this great opportunity right now when this particular administration, both at the federal level and at the state and city level, understands just how critical this is, that they ought to do the right thing, to not have things crashing and I even say to the big guys, right, the big billion-dollar companies that have had the great run of cable and stuff like that, I look at them and I go, why aren't you guys focused on what we need very desperately in this country, which is the 5G and 6G deployment? Go with that, all right? The broadband stuff and internet, come on, that's stuff we can do. I mean, and there's people that do that just for fun. It ain't no rocket science necessarily. Yeah. So, but what we don't have the capability, not everybody can put up the kind of cells that we need in this country, and we ought to be doing a lot more work. I work right now with the Department of Defense on cybersecurity of a lot of devices that are coming along, right? And those devices are going to be driven by 5G and 6G. We ought to be making, war is not going to be on tanks and guns anymore. War is going to be on being able to break your country down through the internet. So that's what these big companies ought to be looking at. We can't afford that kind of stuff. Yeah. Broadband can be done. So that's the way I look at it.
So you are an amazing individual. I think if anybody has not taken away that by this point, they have not been listening. Please go back, rewind the beginning, and watch this again. But this can't be done by yourself. What does your team look like, and who do you need on your team? How is what is the team you need to make this happen?
Well, we have a good team. We need a lot more. So that, and I don't know if you're going to ask me to what's the X factor here, what else is involved in that. But one of the things that I wanted to do is put together a really good, diverse amount of thinking around what we're doing in terms of providing to these communities. So you'll find that, it's a really good balance between male and female in this particular company. We have people that are coming from legal side to deployment, and we have an X factor, which is urban planning. And I'll talk about that when we get to it. But the bottom line is the team really focuses on, again, a human design, if you will, a human-centered design. And so we don't start with how cool is a radio, which you need in deploying a network. We look at what are the issues that are happening in this particular community. So right now we're deploying in East Harlem. And there's very interesting things that are different in East Harlem versus other parts of the city. One, language, right? The first thing you got to do is figure out how to speak the language of East Harlem, which is oftentimes Spanish first. So you have to have that kind of person or people in your company to be able to connect with that. Same thing anywhere else we go, just being able to speak the language, know what's going on in that community. So that's really what our team is about, to be human-centered in all that we do. The things that are in the business that we're doing, it requires a lot of capital because you're looking to put up on radios, you're putting all types of devices, routers, there's all types of things that you want to do for the homes. And that's why sometimes the price comes up so high. So we're trying to do it in a way that we don't have to do that. So once we have that, we deploy, which is a whole nother level of cost. But what we do is we create literally jobs. We try to hire people in the communities that we're serving. So when we're about to deploy something in a community, which is what we've done, we train them, they come on, and all of a sudden they have a skill. How to put up on raceway in their hallways, how to access point gets connected, how to look at all the different parts of putting out a network. So that's really important to us. What we need, probably more so than anything, is we need a little bit more of a sales force. We're much more about community, so we haven't done a good job of really just selling. Yeah. But that would be a good thing for us to really.
Who are you selling to? Are you selling to municipalities, or are you selling to individuals within community?
It's all of that. Our number one target probably are the building owners to let us be a provider into their building. That's one of the first things that we have to do. Once they let us in, and a lot of times they do because they're tired of the others. So why not have another one? It's not like they're kicking anybody else out. They just want us as an option, and we love that. And so, that's the first level. Then the second level is once we have the network up, we got to go to apartment to apartment or house to house to go ahead and get them believing in us and really understanding that we understand what they're dealing with, and hopefully they choose us as their provider. So we don't have a team doing that. All of us are doing it in the whole company, but we'd like to have a very specific group. It could be college kids, whatever, that really sort of focus on the adoption of our network.
So any listeners who are listening to this, if you are or you know somebody who's good at sales, A, lives in the New York area, B, C, is, I think the X factor in that position is you've sold to landlords. Maybe you've sold property management software. Maybe you've sold real estate. You've tried to get a listing for a real estate agent. Maybe you but anything like that where you're not one of those people who's terrified of leaving the comfort of your slippers and pajamas, but are actually willing to get out there and pound shoe leather on pavement and get out there and talk to people who are going to slam the door in your face, get 99 no's to get that one yes.
That's true.
Clayton.
One other X factor that would be exceptional is if you can speak Spanish.
Yeah. Bilingual. I would say that.
I'm not forcing anybody, but that's very helpful. We have other people that can go with you that can speak Spanish. But if you are able to speak the language, that is so good.
Yeah, I found that to be, that was one of when I first moved to this country, I spoke Dutch and Spanish, and they didn't have bilingual education yet. So my parents stopped speaking Dutch and Spanish to me and only spoke English to me.
Wow.
And they took all of my comic books away from me.
Oh, no.
and they gave me all English language versions of the same comic books. And I flipped pretty quickly to English.
Sure.
And then I just spoke English, and I just wanted to be the American surfer dude, man. I want to be, I want to have the long wavy hair like the Bee Gees, man. And then I turned like 20, and I realized that I didn't mind being Puerto Rican. And I actually liked being Puerto Rican. And I learned Spanish again. And
good.
Being bilingual is one of my superpowers. It really is. So
one of my superpowers is what you just mentioned. I grew up surfing. It's true. I was a big time surfer, and I grew up in a city called Oceanside, right, which is right next to Camp Pendleton. So yeah, I surfed all my life. It's one of those beautiful things. Anyway, but yeah, anyone that wants to join the team, we are open, and not just New York. There's other cities that we're going into, and so if you live in a certain area that we are providing, let us know, and we'll be happy to connect with you.
Fantastic. Well, I am just thrilled and over the moon that that you're seeing so much success, that this passion has become a mission and is now being executed in multiple cities. Is just makes me happy in my soul, when it seems there have been multiple years where people who should be succeeding weren't, and people who should not be succeeding were. I'm like, how are they doing that and getting away with it? And it was just driving me bonkers. And the people that you're just like over and over again, like, why aren't you, who are doing amazing work, not getting to see you succeeding, makes me so incredibly happy.
Listen, I feel so good that you and I are reconnecting, because I don't lose my mind about certain things. And one of them is, you are always helping us, encouraging us, being a part of us. You brought us in when some may not have. And some of the things, that work that you were doing with a lot of these startups, was so inspiring to us, to where we started to do that. I actually now have a co-working space in my office for that very same reason that you shared with us. So, and meeting your sister and the whole thing, all that stuff is something, I don't lose that kind of stuff in my mind. And what I wanted to share with you is that, as much as we all are talking about the internet and all that kind of stuff going on, and the war and the battles and all those that comes along with it, at the end of the day, for me, I cherish the moments. I really do. I cherish the moments, the ones that are tough, the ones that are great. Doesn't matter. I cherish them all, because I do realize that everyone has to be where I believe we all believe in, which is people have to be connected. Like I said, from birth to death, we need some level of connectivity. And so none of this stuff is lost on me. I really am grateful for where I am. I'm not upset about anything. I'm really very lucky to have been where I've been in my life, been all over the world. I've been awarded so many different ways. I talk about 23 being the greatest year, and two things really clarified it for me was when I kept telling my team 23 will be our greatest year. And in December, I got a December of 22, I got a letter from the IRS. That is no fun.
That's never fun.
There's some letters.
You get that letter and you're like,
you don't even want to open it.
What are the chances they're like, hey, we didn't realize we took too much money. Here's some more money. Like, never.
Well, I did not open that letter until January 1st, because I was like, you know what, I just got to do it. And exactly as you said, I opened that piece and it said, we owe you money. And I could not believe it.
Oh, that's amazing.
I swear to God, I took a picture of it, brother. I took a picture of it and put it in the bank that day. It said, we owe you money. It was significant.
2023 starts with a bang.
The greatest year of my life, 23. And 3 weeks later, last week, I get a message from the great Reverend Jesse Jackson, who I met 27 years ago. And it was a thing when I was in the cable business, and I wanted him to speak at stuff and all this stuff a long time ago. And so he sent me a letter last week and said, Mr. Banks, I'd like you to be a co-chair of the Wall Street Project coming up in March. And why I say this is, it's not that I need another pat on the back or anything like that, but this is a man that literally held the hand of Martin Luther King when he died. He's the man that has put more kids in the right pathway than most. Put his own life on his own life. And the fact that he still to this day is doing everything he can to make life better for more people. So you can say what you want to say about him, but the bottom line is I feel very honored by it. So when I talk about 23 being the greatest year, it won't only just be measured by how much money I can make. It's going to be these type of moments where the IRS owed me, where Jesse Jackson is asking me. I asked him to be the coach. I used to be the guy always asking people to be coaches and things. But now it's the guy asking. I'm becoming the guy people are asking me to be a coach. So let's everyone on this call, everyone on this video, anyone who's looking at this, listening to this podcast of Devin, you will have the greatest year of your life in 23. Everyone, right? I am already started, but start saying it to yourself. Say it to yourself. Say it. And this is not about go getting a lottery ticket. I'm talking about this is what you can do right now for you, your family, friends, everyone you care about, and most importantly, of yourself. 23 is a year of your life.
God bless. God bless.
So
I think that was that. So this is the end of the formal podcast, the serious part of it. We want to get into the fun part of it now, and we're going to ask you some questions we ask everybody we talk to. First, we call it kind of the pay it forward. Tell everybody about. Can you tell everybody about one or two programs that are that are similar or do things similar to like how you have Silicon Harlem? What are some institutions, some programs that maybe most people don't know about, resources in the communities that people should be aware of that most people are not?
If you have a nonprofit or even a for-profit that's trying to do something great in your community, and you need some resources to help you get there, one of them is go to a website called grants.gov. 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 You will see a healthy amount of money that wants to get behind really good ideas.
Cool.
And I recommend it. It's somewhat complicated and a little bit frustrating, but they do have a crap load of money. So the money comes from a variety of resources. Grants.gov is just a platform, but there's all these different, whether it's from the private sector or from the government, put up these very big grants, and they want people to access that. So there's money there. The second thing I would say is wherever you are, there's an opportunity, and Harlem's a good example. Harlem, if you remember, Devin, there's 14 colleges just in Harlem. A lot of people don't realize that's more than some states. 14 colleges just in Upper Manhattan. And what we do, Silicon Harlem, is we connect with those colleges to do research together. And there's money behind that research. City College, Columbia, Barnard, all of us get together. NYU, we get together and we start doing things. We were the first ones to start doing through the Cosmos Project to look at 5G. We were doing that in 2018 before anybody even knew what it was. So we actually do that, and there's money behind it. So I would recommend that for those who are into the tech sector, particularly, that there's great opportunity. And lastly, I would say, if you have it already or are looking to do it, there's still a huge opportunity to teach. So I am probably the greatest teacher on earth, and the reason why is because I don't have to teach in school. I teach right out of my office. And when you don't have to use and I'm not hating on school. I'm a big believer in it, obviously. But being able, if you have an opportunity to provide kids some education in the summertime or whenever, it's a great opportunity to build more in your community. So I recommend that highly. And there's a lot of resources to get behind that.
Cool. Yeah, I have a good friend out in LA. He runs a nonprofit for teaching African-American men to be high school teachers. He was saying that there was a dearth of African-American male teachers who can act as role models for male students.
Every level, at every level, no question.
And what did I do? I have a book here that I've been reading, and I don't know what I did with it now, of course. But I started reading this book about the lack of basically we've had our thumb on the scale for men for so long. And as we've started to enfranchise women and try to take our thumb off of the scale for men, what we discovered is that A, we had a heck of a lot of smart women, right? But B, we also discovered how broken the system was. And when you start taking the dope out of the system, you start anti-doping the system for men, you start realizing how broken and how unsupportive the system is for men. And this guy wrote this whole book about that. And that's one of my big research projects now, is how do we create a support system for male founders, for males in their career, from underrepresented communities, in a way that isn't so let's disenfranchise women. No, let's keep enfranchising women, but how do we also enfranchise men? And how do we look at the realities of the broken systems that are in place and come up with it? So that book just blew my mind. Are there any books that are either on your to be read or you're reading now that are just blowing your mind?
I'm glad you mentioned what you said in terms about, making things a little bit more fair in everyone's life. The one that I read that I like probably the most, I've read it twice, and I recommended it, and I hope a lot of people already have read it, but I'm going to share anyway. It's called Sapiens, and it's basically a brief history of humankind, because one of the things that it's very clear to me is that we're all just a species. We're not this or that and the other. A good example is I was having breakfast with a guy, and he told me his father was born on a ship in the sea. So what is he?
Yeah.
So this whole stuff is
he a merman? Yeah.
What is he, dolphin? So it's like, we got to realize that we're all just one species.
Yeah.
And what has screwed us up is to separate us in some sort of weird way, and all the kind of craziness that comes with that. And so if you read this book, Sapiens, it's basically a brief history of humankind. It was written by a guy named Yuval Noah Harari. Cool. He's written several books, but this one is one that I think I would recommend for most people, if not everyone. And you'll find that, geez, we're all the same.
Yeah.
And for those of us who've been able to travel all over the world, we kind of realize that's true. Yeah. And if you don't do anything else outside of a book, go to the Olympics.
Yeah.
That's a good example.
The world. Yeah.
Go to the Olympics, because let me tell you something. Everyone at the Olympics has waited 4 freaking years to get there. Okay? Both the athletes and the spectators. We've all waited for 4 years.
Yeah.
So we're all there with that kind of commitment. Yeah. And even if two countries are at war, there's nothing but love at the Olympics. Yeah. So this is all a bunch of, crap that we have to be so separated or hate each other or judge and all this other stuff. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
We are sapiens. So that's the book I would read. And if you want me to put it in the chat, I can happy to do that.
Yeah. We'll put a link to that book in the description.
Wonderful.
The Sapiens. I've heard really great things about that book. I have not read it yet, but it's on my TBR. Like, my TBR just keeps getting longer. I'm now at this point. We were talking earlier. I don't know if we recorded it. We were talking earlier about recording, making sure that you think about the amount of time you have in life and making sure you're utilizing that time to the maximum. I've started thinking about, like, as I try to not be on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, I'm like, how do I maximize my time? And how many books can I read? If I read this much a day, this is how I get to 52 books a year.
That's 52
good. Books a year for 10 years is 520 books.
That's impressive.
It means I only have 1,500 books for the rest of my life.
That's good. That's good. I love it.
Yeah. So I'm trying to get through all those books and really dig into them. And
nice.
So are there any? So we talked about books. Are there any newsletters? Are there? You had mentioned you don't really listen to podcasts, that you're more of a book person. Are there newsletters or blogs that you read?
I follow Futurism. I would recommend that for people who are interested in bizarre stuff. So I particularly follow futurism. I think
Cool.
it's a good idea of what we should be thinking about as we look at the future.
Cool.
I hope my voice gets on that channel actually,
Yeah.
because I want to share some of my thinking around it.
Yeah.
But it's good stuff. It really is.
Anybody from Futurism, from the editorial staff of
Yes,
Futurism, if you
please.
watch this, Clayton Banks.
I've made some great predictions that have come true.
You know, the mayor, I was talking to somebody in the mayor's office, and they're like, how's everything going? And I'm like, I don't know, man. I just quit my 10-year job, and now we have a pandemic. And we were talking, he's like, we should hire you as a futurist. I'm like, really? You think that I'm that good of a predictor? He's like, well, based on what I understand about your work history, every time you quit your job and start a business, some major catastrophe happens. So basically, as soon as you quit, we're all going to bunker down. I was like, dude, this is so mean.
That's funny. That is funny. That's funny. That's good. I like that.
All right. So last but not least, completely self-serving. Is there anybody that we should get on the podcast that you can connect us to interview that the listeners would love to hear from?
It's a good question. So I think there's a lot of, obviously, everyone has something to say, which is good.
Yeah.
Especially a New Yorker. We all have
yes.
We all have something to say.
Yeah.
But if you ever get a chance, and if there's any way I can help, if you want to sort of build upon this whole telecommunications conversation we might have had here, is the FCC chair person of our country. So when you look at the chairperson of the FCC, in my opinion, it's possibly the most powerful position in the world, not just America, the world, because our FCC has a lot of power around the spectrum of the space, right? The universe. So all countries have to come to us when it comes to a lot of that, and we have to coordinate across the world. The FCC spokes chair is the very first in history of 200 and some odd years of FCC is a woman. We have not had a woman in 200 and somehow odd years that we've never had a woman. So the very first woman, her name is Jessica Rosenworcel, and she is the one. I think she could be the greatest FCC chair in the history of this country, and we need to get behind her, because what she's trying to do is what I'm trying to do, which is get everybody connected. Yeah. But she's also looking at space technology, water technology, atmosphere technology. She's having to deal with all these issues, and we need to get behind her, because we finally have somebody that has a different perspective. Cool. Someone who comes up with original ideas. Cool. So if you get her on here, that would be you got to tell me. That's going to be and I'll be on for that one. But also, even if you don't have her on, I would hope that we can continue to tell people about her through your through your podcast, because she could be the greatest FCC in the history of our country. Fantastic.
Well, I will definitely do my best. It's one of those interesting things that, like, the position. Who's heard of the FCC chair? I bet you, like, at least 10 to 20% of the listeners were like Googling, what is FCC chair? Like, you don't know, and you don't realize how incredibly important these positions are. And I find more often than not, the positions that you're unaware of are really important positions. Fed chair, well, only covers all of our money. FCC chair only covers all of our communication. SEC chair only covers, it's like, and you don't hear that. It's very quiet. Like, there's not a lot that you don't see a lot of, like, you don't see the Fed chair on Dancing with the Stars. Like, there's no, until, like, something disastrous happens, then all of a sudden you see Fauci on all the time. Like, you don't, like, I had no idea who Fauci was. I had no idea.
I'm glad I mentioned it because I think you're absolutely right. You're spot on. Maybe people never even heard of FCC, or kind of know about FCC, doesn't really care about. There's only 5
letters mean something, but they don't understand how important this person
and there's
is.
only 5 people that run the FCC, the chair and 4 commissioners.
Wow.
And depending on the president, ends up who's going to be those 5 people, Congress and the president. And so only 5 people, if you hear me what I'm saying, 5 people control the entire communications of our country and a lot of the world.
Wow.
5 people. So that's and that can be controversial depending on who the president is and what we do. And so now that we have someone that really believes, she was the first, as a commissioner, she was the first commissioner I had ever heard say that internet is a critical part of school. She called it the education gap. And this was 2015. She did it right here in New York City. At our second conference, she came as a commissioner and talked about that.
She was a commissioner.
Actually, she called it the homework gap, and it was amazing.
Was she a commissioner of the FCC at that point?
At that point, she was just a commissioner. And
so that's interesting, because I bet you anything that when they decided who they were going to put in that role, that was part of the decision-making criteria.
She had the experience. She knows it very well. She had been on it for several years, and still very, very young and vibrant and all this other stuff. And what I really liked about it is that she has not forgotten. You know, you can get up at this high level and forget about all this stuff like educational gaps and all this other stuff. She's still in that space. She's the one that came up with this ACP, the Affordable Connectivity Program. That comes right out of her team at the FCC. She's the one that's coming up with how we're going to deal with space, like I mentioned, space technology. She's deep into these type of things, and she has not moved on from this homework gap. So I hope you get behind her, Devin, in a profound way.
I would love to have her on. That would be amazing.
And everyone, look her up. Look her up. You will find she's the real deal. She's not playing. She's not playing. She is making stuff real happen. Well, I love her. And I'll tell you this. And she got, so when Biden got presidency, the day after he put her in that position, I should say a few months went by, but it was in October. I'm sorry. It was like October. What was it? It was September 30th or whatever it was. And the next day I got a letter from her saying she wanted me to be a part of the FCC from just thinking about equity. The one day after she was awarded to be the chair, she sent me a letter and asked me to be, part of what she was doing to get connectivity for everyone. I have had all types of cool things happen in my life, lots of things and awards and certificates and all these things. When I got that letter, Devin, it may be the only letter in my life that I put in a frame because
that's really cool.
It's history.
Yeah.
The first woman to run the most powerful commission in the entire United States. I had to put it, and it sits on my wall right now.
That's so cool. That's
crazy.
So cool. Yeah.
All right.
Well,
let's get back to me, man. I'm good. I mean,
so Clayton, thank you so much.
I really appreciate the time, man.
This is amazing for our listeners. Hey, feed the Junto. Comment below. Let us know what do we get right? What do we get wrong? What do you agree with us? Get in our personal space. Look at it from our viewpoint, but tell us about your viewpoint. If you if there are resources that we didn't mention that you think should be mentioned, are there great programs in the different areas? I know of one homegrown Wi-Fi network in Detroit, for example. Are there resources like that we didn't mention, we haven't forgotten, or that you think should be mentioned? Tell us down below. We're going to be creating a Junto, a community just for this podcast. And Clayton's going to be in there. So if you have questions for him, he's not going to be on there 24/7. He does not work for me. Right? But he will get pinged when people ask questions in there, and he'll be part of that community. So if you have questions for Clayton, if you want to find out more about Silicon Harlem, if you want to find out, how to invest in an ISP, if you anything like that, it'll all be in there. So the community function on all of our podcasts and all of our YouTube are turned off, but the link to the community in our platform is there, and we look forward to all meeting you there. Thank you all. And now go make the world 5% better.